Hey, what's up guys? We're coming at you with a brand new Magic the Gathering video, and in this video we're going to be talking about the newly revealed Squirrel Commander that's coming out in the new Unsanctioned set in February. As well as this video, we're also going to be talking about potential ways that you could go about building a commander deck based around this commander. I do want to let you guys know that this is a silver bordered commander, so you will need to check with your playgroup before you run this, and the deck will obviously have to run a lot of silver bordered cards in the deck anyway. As of course, I am not a huge expert in squirrels. I've only been trying to build a squirrel deck for about 6-7 months, well not 6-7 months, for a decent amount of time. But of course, my knowledge is not as expansive as a lot of other people's, or as expansive in terms of building other tribes like slithers. So please, if you have any suggestions about cards I can add to the deck, and other combos I might not have talked about, please let me know in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. Without further ado guys, let's jump into it, and hopefully you guys do enjoy the video. So guys, the Squirrel Commander is Acornelia Fashionable Filcher. She's a 4-drop for 3 colorless and a black 3/3 legendary squirrel that reads, whenever you cast a spell with a squirrel in its art, you get an acorn counter. Whenever a squirrel you control enters the battlefield or dies, you get an acorn counter. So right off the bat, considering how squirrels work within Magic the Gathering, these first two abilities are actually on point with how squirrels work, which is great. And we'll get into, once we get into the squirrel cards, we'll talk about more how that's going to synergize. We can pay 3, 2 colorless and a black, and pay X squirrel acorn counters. Target creature gets -X until the end of turn. And we can pay green and pay X acorn counters. Target creature gets +X until end of turn. So overall, I do have a few issues with Acornelia. For starters, she is Golgari. We don't have access to white, which means we don't really have access to some of the best populate cards that are out there. We can't play the populate commanders, but having a Golgari Squirrel Commander does mean we can run every squirrel card printed, so I guess we can't get super mad at that. Now, how would we go about building a Squirrel Commander deck? Well, for starters, we need to note that it specifies whenever we cast a spell with a squirrel in its art, and whenever a squirrel we control enters the battlefield or dies, we get an acorn counter. So let's take a look at every card that I could find that features a squirrel in its artwork. Starting things off, we have half squirrel, half blank. Now this is an augment squirrel, which essentially we have no other augments in our deck as of yet, unless they reveal any other squirrel cards for the Unsanctioned set or in the future. So this card we can't run, we can't cast it, so we can't really get the ability off that. There's a lot of squirrel cards out there that aren't actually squirrels themselves, which is why the wording on Acornelia is actually really good for the deck. For starters, of course, we have Deranged Hermit and Deep Forest Hermit, its functional reprint. Both of these are 5-drop, one's an elf and one's an elf druid, that when they enter the battlefield, we get to make 4 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens, which means we're going to go ahead and get 4 acorn counters, which is great. They both pump up all our squirrels by +1/+1, and Deranged Hermit has Echo, meaning at the beginning of our upkeep, we have to sacrifice it unless we pay its Echo cost. Deep Forest Hermit is similar, but it has Vanishing, so it comes into play with 3 time counters on it. Sadly, because we are in Golgari, we don't have any ways to super consistently flicker these. We do have Conjurer's Closet, which is going to be an auto-include in the deck anyway, considering how powerful these ETBs are, and getting ETBs off acorn counters whenever our squirrels enter the battlefield or die. So these two are both auto-includes. The 5 CMC is a little bit high, but we do now get 5 creatures, and we also get 4 acorn counters for each one. We've also got one of my favorite squirrels, Squirrel Dealer, which is another great card to Conjurer's Closet. It's a 1-drop 1/1 raccoon lizard bird that reads, whenever it enters the battlefield, you ask a person outside the game, do you like squirrels? If he or she does, you make a 1/1 green squirrel token. So which means, whilst this entering the battlefield itself is not going to get you an acorn counter, the squirrel that you're going to make off the ability is going to make you one as well. We've also got a few more druids with Squirrel Wrangler and Nut Collector. Both of these have pretty high CMC. Squirrel Wrangler is a 4-drop and Nut Collector is a 6-drop, but they both have the ability to make squirrels. Now, Squirrel Wrangler is 4-drop for 2/2, and you can pay 1 in a green and sacrifice the land to put 2 1/1 green squirrel creatures tokens into play. You can pay 1 in the greens to sacrifice the land. All squirrels get +1/+1 until the end of turn. Nut Collector is at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a 1/1 green squirrel token into play, and it has threshold. So as long as you have 7 or more cards in your bid, all your squirrels are going to get +2/+2. So both of these cards work really well in making squirrels out on the battlefield. The issue I have with Nut Collector is it is a 6-drop. Thankfully, a lot of the squirrel cards that we actually see supported are druids. So you could play some sort of druid tribal synergies just to get these cards out in the field with something like Belp's Portal and declare druids. So what it does, it's a 5-drop artifact where you can pay 3 and tap it to put a creature of the chosen type from your hand on the battlefield. So might be an easy way to get these druids out super easily and super consistently, because none of these cards when they're cast, it's when they're put into play. So that could probably be a really easy way to cheat those out. We have a Nakatuko Shrine, which is another interesting squirrel card. Probably not worth running, because whenever a player plays a spell, that creature puts X 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens into play, where X is the number of cards in all graveyards with the same name as that spell. No Squirrel says you can run as many as you want. This is probably something to include in your deck. Other Squirrel cards that we have access to include Nickering Squirrel. It's a 1-drop 1/1 that lets us tap him to increase the result of any die roll by any player by 1. So it's a 1-drop 1/1 Squirrel. So it's basically a 1-drop 1/1 that gives us an Acorn counter. We have the Steel Squirrel, which is a 2-drop for a 1/1. Whenever you roll a 5 or higher on the die, Steel Squirrel gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the result of the die. We can pay 6 to roll a die. Now, you probably would run a small dice roll sub-theme in this deck, but only really because you have Chittering. We also have the Crozan Beast. Now, this one, you could argue it doesn't have a squirrel in its artwork, but it is a squirrel beast, so it's kind of going to be... This is something you're going to find as an issue with your playgroup, trying to arguing what's a squirrel and what's not. But this one is a squirrel on its type, so I assume it's a squirrel. 4-drop 1/1. If you have Threshold, it gets +7/+7. So I guess you'd only be running this because you don't really have access to any other squirrels. We also have the Earl of Squirrel, which is the Squirrel Lord. It's a 6-drop 4/4 Squirrel Advisor with Squirrel Links, so damage dealt by him causes you to create that many 1/1 green Squirrel creature tokens as well as dealing damage, which is great. Creature tokens control are squirrels in addition to their other types, which is absolutely insane, which is why I wish we had access to white, so we could play more token strategies like make soldier tokens or angel tokens, and they become squirrels as well. And other squirrels get +1/+1, so really powerful card, definitely amazing. You definitely want to be running that in your deck. And we also have the Squirrel Mob, which is kind of like a big beat stick. It's a 3-drop squirrel at 2/2, and it gets +1/+1 for each other squirrel in play. So it's kind of like a one-off coat of arms, which is definitely something you'd want to be considering to run in this deck as well, because you can have a lot of druids, you can have a lot of elves, you can have a lot of squirrels. So they're all going to pump each other up really, really nicely. Now, other cards we have that aren't creatures that do have squirrels in their artwork. You could probably argue that Acorn Catapult has squirrels in it, so it's a 4-drop artifact. You pay 1, tap it, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. That creature's controller or that player puts a 1/1 green squirrel creature token on the battlefield. Now, I believe you would get to choose this. I don't know, but most of the time you'd just be dealing yourself the 1 damage to make the squirrels. We have more enchantments with Squirrel Powered Scheme and Chittering Doom. Now, both of these are designed to work together. So, Squirrel Powered Scheme is a 3-drop enchantment, and Chittering Doom is a 4-drop enchantment. Squirrel Powered Scheme increases the result of each die roll you roll by 2. Chittering Doom will read whenever you roll a 4 or higher on the die, you create a 1/1 squirrel token. Both of these do have squirrels in the artwork, so they'll give you Acorn counters, and if you're playing a dice roll sub-theme, obviously you'll have access to more squirrels. Of course, we have Form of the Squirrel, which you could run if you've had enough of the game and you want to lose. It's a 1-drop enchantment that comes into play. You put a 1/1 green squirrel creature token into play, you lose the game when it leaves play. Creatures can't attack you, you can't be the tired spells or abilities, and you can't play spells, but your squirrel can, and your squirrel can be fought. So up to you if you want to run Form of the Squirrel. I probably wouldn't run it. We also have Squirrel Farm, which is a great card to play in this deck. It's a 3-drop enchantment that reads in colors in the green. You can choose a card in your hand covering the artist's name. Reveal the card to target player. If the player cannot name the artist, reveal the artist's name and put a squirrel token into play. It's a 1/1 squirrel. So again, anything that makes squirrel tokens in this deck, you want to be running. Casting it will also give you squirrels. We also have a great way to abuse making Acorn counters with Kill Destroy. It's a 3-drop instant that destroys target non-black creature. We can yell gotcha whenever an opponent says kill or destroy. You may say gotcha, and if you do, we can return kill or destroy from our graveyard to our hand, and it has a squirrel in the artwork. So it's essentially a recyclable murder with a squirrel on it. So really, really powerful card in this deck because we're going to be casting it and we're going to be getting a lot of Acorn counters. We also have the original printing of Might of Oaks. It's a 4-drop instant that gives target creature +7/+7 till end of turn. Now, obviously, this isn't a great card to run normally, but it does have a squirrel on it, and it's going to make one of our squirrels really, really big. So, of course, we're in green, so we're definitely going to be ramping. Some other cards that we can use to make squirrels and Acorn counters at the same time are both Acorn Harvest and Chatter of the Squirrel. So they're both sorceries, where Chatter of the Squirrel is a 1-drop and Acorn Harvest is a 4-drop. Chatter of the Squirrel will put a 1/1 green squirrel creature token into play, and you can flash it back for 2. Acorn Harvest will put 2 squirrel tokens into play, and you can flash it back for 2 and pay 3 life. So casting these and flashing back as well is also casting it as well, as far as I'm aware. So you'll get to get more Acorn counters out of the card's uses, and you'll be able to make more squirrels. Druid's Call and Squirrel's Nest. Two other awesome enchantments, both auras. Druids, whenever enchanted creature is dealt damage, its controller may put that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens into play. The issue I have with Druid's Call, it's not when it deals damage, so you need to have a big beefy creature out that you know is indestructible. A Squirrel's Nest is when enchant land and it has tap, create a 1/1 green squirrel token. So you definitely want to be running both of these in your deck. If you can get any value out of Druid's Call, why not? You also have the Squirrel Land, which is Swarmyard. So you can tap it to add colors to your mana pool, and you can also tap it to regenerate a target squirrel. Now, in Legion of Hollow, the 4-drop 3/4 that when it enters put into the graveyard from play, each player may pay any amount of mana to put that many of squirrel tokens under play under his control. So this can help your opponent, but if you're running token doublers like Parallel Lives and Doubling Season, which you probably do want to be running in this deck anyway, you can get a lot of value out of that. We also have Second Harvest, which of course will make a copy of every squirrel token we have out on the battlefield to ourselves. Other cards you can run are fogs like Druid's Deliverance, which is going to actually, work as a fog, and it's also going to populate, which is going to give us another squirrel token. The cards that I think would be really good in this deck are cards like Adaptive Automaton and the one Aether Revolt. They're both, when they come into play, you pick a creature type and you'll pick squirrels, and Adaptive Automaton will give all squirrels +1/+1, and it also counts as a squirrel itself. You have the other one that's like whenever squirrels come into play, they get a +1/+1 counter, so you make your squirrels a little bit bigger. Because squirrels are mostly 1/1s, you'll be running a draw engine with your Skull Clamp as well to draw as many cards as possible. We have, of course, Conjurer's Closet, which you'll probably be running as well to flicker some of your ETB squirrel cards. Rep-type Replicator would be great in this for. And when it comes into play, you choose a color and a creature type, and Rip-type Replicator comes into play with X charge counters on it. You can pay 4, tap it, and put an XX creature token of the chosen color into play, where X is the number of charge counters on Rip-type Replicator. So if you just pay 1 and a 4, you just pay 5, you can make 1/1 squirrels by tapping it, or you probably want to put more into it to make some bigger squirrels. Other cards that would be really good in this deck, like I would mention, of course, you've got Crucible of Worlds and Lifecaster's Bestiary. Lifecaster's Bestiary allows us to scry, and if we cast a creature spell, we get to pay a green and draw a card. Crucible of Worlds allow us to play lands from our bin, which we're going to be sacrificing for our Squirrel Wrangler. We'll be running our lands that are going to have sack effects. So obviously Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, heck, you could play your fetch land as well if you really wanted to. You've also got Myriad Landscape, Field of Ruin, so many really good cards you can run with Crucible Worlds in your deck. Ice theme, sub theme, we've got Cracks of the Thumb, which will let us roll, when we roll a die, we roll 2, and instead we will ignore one of the results. We have Willing Test Subject, which is reached. When we roll a 4 or higher on the die, we can put the +1/+1 counter on him, and we can pay 6 to roll a 6-sided die. Loba. Creature has this creature deals 1 damage to target player. Roll a 6-sided die on a 5 or higher, untap it, so you can pay 2 to equip it. We have the Hydra that lets us roll X dice when it comes into play. Anything that, can give you value off your Chittering Doom can be really useful. Other really good cards in this deck, you can run the Lurking Predators and Icon of Ancestry. Lurking Predators, whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library if it's a creature, put it on the battlefield, otherwise put it on the bottom of your library. Icon of Ancestry, of course, will pump up all our squirrels by +1/+1. Or you could even name Druids, because our Druids are pretty weak, and we can use this card to cycle for the top 3 for our Druids. You can also run Wild Pair, which is really good in this deck, because despite it being like a 6 CMC enchantment, whenever we cast a creature spell from our hand, we go ahead and grab another one from our deck whose power and toughness is the same. Now, if you looked at our creatures, a lot of our creatures end up being 1/1s or 2/2s. So if we cast like a 1/1 Llanowar Elves, we can just go ahead and grab a Deep Forest Hermit and chuck it straight out on the field, because they're both 1/1s, and we can get instant value out of that. But anyway, guys, that is my initial thoughts on this potential commander and the way you could build the deck. Obviously, I'm no expert on squirrels, and if you guys have any suggestions about cards I could run in the deck, if there's any cards with squirrels on them that I've missed, I just did a quick search about 10-15 minutes looking up cards, trying to find cards with squirrels in the artwork. I do feel like Wizards will eventually have to release a list of the official cards out there that do count as squirrels in the artwork, just to make things a little less confusing. But if you guys, like I said, had any suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. You also need to remember, if you want to build this deck, make sure you check with your playgroup, because this deck will be running a lot of silver border cards, and your playgroup might not be okay with that. I'm hoping my playgroup is okay with it, because squirrels is just shenanigans. Anyway, if you like the video, remember to like and subscribe, hit that bell button so you're updated whenever I release new content. Feel free to check out some of the other Magic videos up here on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you for my next video.